It has been over a year since Robert Champion died of wounds allegedly inflicted by a group of Florida A&M University band members in a hazing incident that left parents across the country outraged and afraid for their own college-age children and calling for justice. Last May, 10 of the band members involved were charged with third-degree felony hazing. But this week, the Florida State's Attorney's Office said they're adding the charge of manslaughter for each defendant, and they've charged 2 more defendants with manslaughter. Joining us to talk about this devastating case is the mother of Robert Champion, Pamela Champion, and the family's attorney, Christopher Chestnut. Folks, welcome to Washington Watch.
How are you?
Well, Pamela, we certainly offer our condolences for the loss of your son. That is the last thing that any parent would certainly want to go through, sending their child off to college. So I want to get your reaction to the decision this week to file manslaughter charges and seeing this expand from 10 to 12. Do you believe that you're on the path to get justice for the death of Robert?
Well, I can't say that I was very encouraged to hear the news of them adding the manslaughter to the charges. I definitely think it's a step in the right direction. My husband and I were very pleased.
Certainly there's been lots of attention focused on the university, what they knew, what they didn't know. Do you believe that in Florida A&M's case, that they also are culpable for what took place? Because we've heard other incidents come out. All of a sudden, there's been a university-wide investigation. The president is no longer there. And so what responsibility do you believe the university has in this, in addition to what the criminal courts will decide as it relates to these individual band members?
Well, what I will say is that the university was aware of the problem that they had at the school. This just didn't happen in 2011. The problem they had at this school has been for years within that band, and the fact that nothing was really done is how things kept escalating. There were numerous of cases of how things were escalating. Many parents and students were complaining, but nothing was done.
For decades, not just years, decades.
And Christopher, on that particular point, some folks were hopeful that after what took place with Robert, that you would see some changes take place in other bands. But I spent some time speaking at Prairie View A&M University. The president there had to suspend their drum line due to hazing. At Texas Southern University, they also had issues there. And so what is it about this, even with the death of a young man at Florida A&M, Robert Champion, that you still heard these examples of hazing taking place in these bands on HBCU campuses? But also, let's be honest, there's hazing taking place on college campuses across the country, but there's something unique when it comes to HBCU bands.
Absolutely. And, you know, initiation is a part of a collegiate experience, especially when considering a band or a fraternity or sorority. But the level and extent of hazing is shocking at FAMU, at least in this instance. Furthermore, you know, hazing isn't the only pathway to excellence. There are multiple avenues of discipline that can assure excellence beyond and beside hazing. I think now we're seeing a different trend because for the first time, this has really been taken seriously. I think for a long time it's been swept under the rug. It's been hush-hush. It's been something that's been kept within the community. This has gained national exposure. And so now that, especially with these students being charged with manslaughter, this takes it to a new round. There are significant penalties associated with hazing now.
Pamela, how do you respond to critics who say that your son was culpable in this, in that it takes 2 to haze? It takes the individual who chooses to haze, it takes the individual who receives it. He was the drum major, and critics say, look, he played a role in this. How do you respond to that? Because certainly that is likely going to come up in the case from the defense as it relates to this particular these charges.
Well, the way that I respond to that is, if anyone that is saying those kind of things, then it's obvious they didn't know Robert. Most people that know my son, the only way they know him is through the people who killed him. So you have to consider your source of those that's trying to tell you who he is. So the main thing is, if people are saying that, then it's obvious they don't know my son.
Chris, what is
this? It's not an isolated incident, Roland. This has been happening for decades.
Chris, what is the status
and documented incidents of hazing? It's a culture.
What is the status of these civil suits that the family has filed on behalf of Robert Champion?
Yeah, we filed a lawsuit last year. There are some motions pending. Florida A&M filed a motion to dismiss, a motion for summary judgment. The bus line filed a motion to dismiss. We're waiting on the judge's rulings on those motions. We're continuing to take depositions. We're continuing to propound discovery. So we're, to the extent that we can, moving the case along.
All right, then. Well, Christopher Chestnut, we certainly appreciate it. And Pamela Champion, thank you so very much for joining us as well. Again, our best to you and your husband as you still deal with the aftermath of the death of your son, Robert. Thanks a bunch for joining us here in Washington Watch.
Thanks so much.
Folks, our roundtable is next.